morning, all. Welcome. We're going to get started with our meeting of November 22nd of the Peel Police Services Board. And first, I'd like to introduce everybody that's here with regards to a brief introduction, if you will. First, good morning. Welcome to our board and our meeting today. We will begin with Section 10 Caledon OPP meeting. Welcome, and I'd like to introduce Inspector Duran to speak to that. So that is Section 10 Caledon OPP. We will now refer to the OPP Caledon agenda. First of all, a roll call. Everybody is here. All members are present. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Then I will take Mr. Howe and Mr. Bowden to move and second the minutes. All those in favor? Revised minutes. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Apparently there's revised minutes.
Actually, further, were there any comments you'd like to make, Inspector Guerin, before I start?
No.
So the report as it is. Are there any questions from members of the board with regards to the OPP report? Seeing none, then I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Vice Chair Chaffee to move it. Mayor Crombie to second that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. This concludes the Section 10 Caledon OPP agenda. Thank you, Inspector Durant, for taking the time to attend. Thank you. All right, this now brings us to our public agenda. We will begin the Services Board meeting of November 22nd. Roll call. First of all members are present. We've already determined that. Are there any conflicts of interest with regards to this portion of the agenda? Seeing none. Item 1, approval of the minutes of the meeting held Friday, October 25. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Mr. Button, seconded by Mr. Chapa. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That is carried. Consent agenda. In accordance with the board's procedures policy, we will now move to the consent agenda, to the motions rather, for the consent agenda. The consent agenda deals with items considered routine. Do any members wish to remove this item from consent? Can I have a motion with regards to the approval of item 4 on consent? That has been moved by Mr. Attia. It has been seconded by Mr. Bowden. All those in favor? Thank you. We will now move to the board members' questions and or announcements. Ahmed, you wanted to take, Mr. Attia, you wanted to take this opportunity to make an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had the opportunity to attend a number of events by the board and the police service in the last several months. I just want to acknowledge that I was very proud to see 39 new recruits, and the diversity among our new recruits who graduated was something to be proud of. I think it's very aligned with the direction of the previous board and the diversity and equity hopes that we have for the service. And I've also had the opportunity to be present at the Civilian Long Service Awards. We had 10 and 15-year civilians who have served in police service, which from what I understand is the equivalent of 575 years of service. So that's a lot of loyalty, and people are very proud of Peel Police. And as well, we have the uniform 25 and 30-year awards, about just under 100 individuals who were awarded. And so that was also a proud moment for our service.
Thank you very much for bringing it up. Does anybody else have questions or wish to make an announcement from the board? Seeing none, I now go to deputations. We will move on. A reminder that the deputations will be limited to 5 minutes of length in accordance with the board's procedure policy, and I will alert you as you're coming close to that time. Our deputation today is from Councillor Carolyn Parrish and some of her guests on the topic of Peel Regional Police, Malton Division. Carolyn, come on forward, please. And Carolyn, if I can, I think that this is a rather fulsome and important process. I don't know that 5 minutes could do it justice. Carolyn, I think with the relent of the board, Carolyn, if you run a little bit on, we completely understand.
Well, it would be a great pleasure to say I'm not speaking in.
Okay, and you're going to introduce your friends.
And Bartley is the citizen member who collected over 2,000 signatures on the petition, and Andrew Bowker, she's done all the work as well, and they are answers.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Anne. And have we got her microphone going? Just make sure that we can hear Anne.
I will try to change this on. A second.
Oh, very good. Thank you and welcome.
I'm
Please
usually
proceed.
very loud anyway, so I'll try to calm down. Thank you for giving the residents of Malton an opportunity to present comments to the Police Service Board today. We are here to present a petition representing the concerned residents of Malton, requesting a police division in our village which is both isolated from the rest of Mississauga and in serious need of constant police presence. For a variety of circumstances, we believe Moulton most assuredly qualifies for increased police attention. We can show there was a division planned, approved, and funded in 1994, with land purchased, a station designed by Stafford Hansel Architects, and a tender for construction was close to being issued. December 18th, 1995, the project was canceled, rather than deferred in a difficult budget year. Yet in September 1999, a surplus of $5,449,959 in the Police Service Board was redirected to a debt reserve fund, which eventually saw the Amel Kolb Training Center on Derry Road near Hurontario Street built. A community station was eventually opened in Westwood Square as a replacement for a full division. Without any consultation, it was closed in February of 2018. The community has recently welcomed an announcement by the chief regarding reopening the Westwood Square Community Station. In fact, Moulton citizens appreciate that Fieldgate Properties has given the community space free for more than the past year so that police presence can be maintained in Moulton. They have committed to continue this generous offer because they have observed the rapid increase in crime and violence since the station closed in their mall. The Moulton community sincerely appreciates the new chief's promise to reopen the community police station with a larger footprint that we assure will involve more officers in the community station and patrolling in and around the village. We sincerely hope the reopening of the substation at Westwood Square, again rent-free, thanks to the generosity of Fieldgate Properties, who understand the incredible importance of a significant police presence in Moulton, will act as an effective, although temporary measure to increase a sense of security and safety for the community, particularly after a recent traumatic gun battle and death, as well as 2 roadside shootings close to the village. We request, based on incredibly high proportion of regional taxes paid by one of the most economically challenged areas of Mississauga. In fact, 13.4% of all taxes collected in 26 wards in the region of Hill comes from Ward 5. 50% of that comes from Moulton. As I pointed out, Moulton includes one of the most economically challenged communities in Mississauga and the highest proportion of new Canadians who are struggling to adapt to Canadian culture and society. Our proximity to the airport, the Woodbine Racetrack, and massive airport complex increases the factors affecting Moulton's security. We are pleased with the new chief's promise to reopen the Westwood Square Community Station with a larger footprint, and with his recent community meetings with us, where he promised to increase patrols in the village. This is an effective interim measure, while a review of the current division pattern is taking place. In the end, a full division for Moulton may not fit a revamped plan for the police service delivery in Peel. We will, however, require a minimum storefront station with 24-hour coverage, several platoons of officers redeployed from one of the region's major divisions to enlarge community station in our village. A compromise may be reasonable and possible. We sincerely thank the new chief for his attention to our community. Our petitioners will not be satisfied, however, with the old-style community station that exists solely for the reporting of incidents in the community and open to one daytime shift per day and closed on weekends. Malton anticipates the day that officers whose patrol area includes Malton will be dispatched from the community station over a 24-hour period, 7 days a week. We understand the station itself will continue to be rent-free. We understand officers are currently patrolling the Malton community. We fail to understand why our request would in fact add any cost. We consider our request to be an appropriate interim step to half division or some rebose form of police service appropriate for the conditions of the Malton Village community. Thank you for your attention, and we are happy to answer any questions you might have. I would also like to present to you, I had a group of citizens help me over the last 18 months. We've been working very hard. We have 3,140 names of the citizens in Malton that signed they want the station back. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll formally receive that petition from you in a moment through one of our clerks. Perhaps Raluca can take it from you there, our acting clerk in that department. And what I want to do, before I go to the chief and the round, I do want to make it very clear to you that you've been heard. I would be less than remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that you had a very, very, very vocal councillor on the file who has been unrelenting in this cause, which is in keeping with the finest tradition of your local councillors, because it seems to me you had a previous other local councillor, or I think would go on to become mayor, who sits at this table, who has equally been unrelenting in this cause. And you also had a member around the council table in Mississauga for 30 years who somehow has ended up in this seat now, in addition to my regional duties, who has had to hear this unrelentingness for all these years. So you've had great advocacy on the file, and if you've been heard, it's because of the work you've done and the work those two ladies have done as well.
I definitely agree.
Absolutely.
The citizens are very grateful.
And they should be. Very well said. Thank you. With that, Chief, your thoughts first, and then I'd like to go to Mayor Crombie. Chief.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Ms. Barkley, it's great to see you again. I think for everybody's awareness, Ann and I had a chance to spend about an hour or more in the community in Westwood last week with a real, I think it was a good conversation. You know, as you know, I've been spending time in the Malton area with not just my executive team, but taking officers that are really in the heart of that community with me to really experience what not just, you know, the residents feel, the youth feel, the business community, the social services, not-for-profits, and the Malton Community Center. And without a doubt, I think, you know, I hope you obviously see that from us as an organization, that we are responsive, we're trying to be responsive to really what a community feels is their community safety need, right? And, you know, you've heard us speak before about the fact that numbers and statistics are important, but how a community feels and sees their community to be safe is something that we have a commitment to as a police agency to be responsive to. And you know, we had a great conversation because it was the ability to hear from, you know, the community members that you brought with you about the reality, what, you know, you're hearing at the doorstep amidst getting petitions, and then also clearly an opportunity for me to discuss, you know, how on my end it looks like to achieve these solutions when, you know, we do have, you know, a very large region to be considerate of. But notwithstanding that, you know, you not that we jumped the queue a little bit, but you knew when you walked in that you know, we're going to do our best to get a heartbeat into that community, into that substation, and that it is an interim solution, right? And based on the board's direction to me as a chief and our police agency, we're undertaking this because we've got the short-term activity and then we've got a long-term service review. But you all need to know that in the midst of it, we are also looking at midterm solutions. And will it look like, 4 platoons out of that storefront, or will it look like something else? As our conversation, and I think that the sincerity comes from me when I'm going to look at all the opportunities to fill, that space between short and long term with something that's appropriate for a community, that legitimately needs feeling and the reality of enhanced service delivery, right? And so those are my comments, and I'd like to thank you for creating the space, and Councillor Parrish for creating the space for me to meet, the management at Fieldgate. We've been very thankful for their willingness. We know it's good for not only the community, but the business community. And as we look forward to moving into these next initiatives, you know that you've got my connection to you, and we've got the superintendent in the area. And we have a job also to communicate how a day in the life of an officer goes, right? And it's important for us to balance the needs of serving the entire community, and I love my colleagues in the fire sector. They respond from their bricks and mortar. I also have this added responsibility of getting my people out to the community from where they can respond when they start their shifts. And the fact that I also have to look at how many I've got there, which is my other thing. As I mentioned to you, I'd love for us to have the right number of people start the day in a particular community. And so when I look to the service delivery review, we're going to look at all of it, and of course use information and be consultative with you. So you're, the sentiment I want to leave with you is that you've got a police organization, as always. We, pretty much all of us are new and can't speak to what happened in 1995, but we can certainly turn the page and keep moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Chief, thank you very much. Mayor Crombie.
Thank you, Chief, and really I want to thank you for the time and attention you paid to this very important issue for us here in Malton. I'm a former councillor, as you know, and Councillor Parrish is their biggest champion and advocate, and I know you met with her very early on after you started in your role, and now met with significant time with Anne and the community, and I know you see the importance of this. I mean, this is a very unique community, as you heard Anne say, isolated kind of in between Brampton, Mississauga, north of the airport, high priority neighborhood, higher incidence of violent crime as we've seen. We saw the most recent shooting in Darcel where we lost an innocent victim in Jonathan Davis, and 136 casings were found. Human trafficking issues, all kinds of issues that are very unique to Peel, all exemplified in this little pocket, this little community that has been underserviced for so long. And so step one is we've asked for the service review, hoping we would lead to a full service station. But this is a wonderful interim measure. So there, I know the community is delighted that they'll see the doors open, the lights on, and greater police presence in the Malton community. And Anne, I think, we knew you were gathering names on a petition. We had no idea it would be that large. So we really want to thank you both, actually, for the work that you have done. And it is interesting, through Councillor Parrish's sleuthing, she's a great investigative reporter, by the way. She really is. She should have a whole other career when this politics thing doesn't work out for her. But to find that the money was set aside for a Malton station had been somehow rechanneled for the old Clove Center back in 1995. So a real loss to the community. We don't want to question what the decisions were of the day, but certainly you can't impose today's standards back then. But for today, that was a very bad decision. For a very worthy community that certainly we see the evidence that could have made a significant difference in Malton. And so we're delighted. On the timing issue, Chief, I guess I was supposed to ask a question, not just pontificate, but so the timing of the revitalized community health station in the Westwoods Wall is Q1 or right away, or?
I believe I can probably defer to Acting Deputy Patrick, but we are looking to do the work starting immediately. There's some remedial work that needs to be done within the facilities, water damage and whatnot, to just get it back to a functional space where our officers can
And
work.
it's an expanded space as well, am I correct, or is it the same footprint?
The whole physical footprint was always ours, but we egressed to just one small portion of it. So we're kind of, refreshing the entire thing, and
Very good.
it needs signage, and, the feeling that the curtains, Ken Councilor mentioned to me, that the curtains are open, and it's got that feel that we're there. The feeling of its presence oozing out of it needs to happen, so
Yeah.
that requires some remedial work, and, we're cautious, we wanna, undersell or deliver on the date and time, but. as we
Q1,
look-
Q1, Q2?
I think it would be Q1 at the least, I think, by the terms range.
Yeah, we're looking at Q1, and I have the facilities director here as well. But there's definitely some work to do there, just to be able to occupy the space in the bottom floor.
If you
But
need,
it's a priority.
if you need enhanced budgeting to get that done, let me know, we'll move that motion. And how many officers will we see there?
At the moment, so there's nobody there, it's just a
No, we
place to go,
understand.
microwave a lunch perhaps, and so what we're doing is having assigned officers in there, and as you know, we're working on a complement during the day, at least at any given two, and that's right, that are in there, and then, but the patrol division that's responsible for the area is going to use it as a hub for coming in and
So there will be
reporting.
24/7 service out of that hub.
I don't know if we'll be able to achieve that right away, but we're going to work our way to an appropriate response. I think the reality is that the resourcing that's in there has to come from displaced, right? And I mentioned to Councilor Parrish that I've gone to ship parades right across this region, and on paper, there might be 40 to 50, but there aren't in reality starting the day there. And that's just the reality of how we look after time off and people's health and wellness. So it's an interesting challenge, but we've found some resources already, and we're looking at more efficiencies. And this pertains to the broader service delivery review. We've got a variety of individuals in the organization doing different functions, which may have the capacity to give that more of a feel and presence.
Right.
So, it's an iterative process, and we're starting with making sure it's open and it's not just a locked door.
Correct. Well, we appreciate that, Chief. When we had announced the service delivery review, it was a very important first step for you to analyze the kind of service that Malton was receiving. And I know Deputy Berkeley Brown has previously run that station as well, so she may be a great source of information forward quickly. But we also were aware that Malton being served out of Division 12, which is a 14-minute drive away. So I know that police aren't sitting in the parking lot of Division 12, they're out on the road, but the perception was that it was a very long distance and a lot of time to enact a service call in Malton should the officers not be in the area.
And yes, and this is a communication piece that we as an organization are looking to articulate better. I think, we need to inform really the number of officers that are really in a bricks and mortar facility versus that are out available for calls. We don't police from a building. There are some resources that are there. Proximity, is obviously a consideration when we look at strategic assets in our region, and that will be one of the things we consider. And as I mentioned, until we can get to that point, we're going to find interim and intermediate solutions to ensure that the right service delivery is there. Back to the same thing is, I walked the community and walked into Darcel, and I know the community would like to see us more. And I just need to say that doesn't necessarily mean the location of the building can result in that. The connection between presence and a bricks and mortar is different than how we deploy and presence. So
I think Councilor Parrish will agree, and the others, the community members, that the greenway belt behind the wet mall is a significant source of concern for criminal activity and should be monitored as well, right? So we thank you, and if we need anything more, got a pipeline directly to this board, so please ask and we'll be there. So hopefully in Q1 we'll see more activity in the Malton Community Station. Thank you for the work you've done both on this and Councillor Parrish for your investigative reporting. Thank you.
You should also be impressed that I stayed very quiet. Never happened.
I was particularly impressed. Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. Just a couple of thoughts. I have to tell you, I hope it doesn't go unnoticed. Here we are on the 51st day of our new chief's service, and in less than 2 months, you've become the priority. That says a lot about the chief and your advocacy. Second point I want to make is, and I'm in a very delicate position because it's not one and the same. I have the blessing of being the chair of this institution, but also the regional chair, but they're separate and apart when I sit. But I think a fine point has to be made to my colleagues who otherwise sit around this table, and the mayor's touched upon it, and I'm glad we have our advocacy. At our last budget meeting and at our last council session, it was some direction from the crowd that everybody's got to come in at 1.5% perhaps. Well, I've already asked the chief, what does that mean? He goes, well, it might mean a dozen officers less. And that's a dozen less officers that can't help us patrol in Malton. So wearing this hat only, as the Sargon Police Services Board, we need our help from our regional friends to understand that the police budget is unique and a standalone budget under law anyway. And I appreciate the mayor's comments that we're going to need that advocacy around that table because we need those resources for this particular file. The second point that I wanted to make is, and a fine point, but I think it's very, very important for the chief to say, some might suggest that you may be jumping the queue. My argument is you're not jumping the queue, you're getting back in after 15, 20 years. You're not jumping any queue at all. In my eyes, you were taken out many, many years ago, and you've been in that holding pattern ever since. And I think that's a message Councillor Parrish and the mayor and I will be carrying on as well when we deal with our colleagues going forward. With that, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for your petition. I need a formal motion of receipt of the deputation and receipt of the petition. Moved by Mayor Crombie, seconded by Mr. Bowden. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And if you can present Raluca with your petition just back there. And thank you for being here. All right, moving on. We now have a presentation today from Peel Regional Police on overview of the Internet Child Exploitation Unit. Chief, would you like to introduce this presentation, please?
Absolutely, Chair. And just like to invite up Inspector Paul Cove and Detective Mark Ford. And while they're coming up, I just wanted to double back, Chair, to the last meeting we're at. And I think your efforts to communicate publicly about the analogy, and I think I've quoted you probably a couple times this last 51 days, is the analogy of a duck on the water and the feet underneath paddling. And in the absence of us, sharing strategically and communicating the depth of what happens outside of, just the front line, it's very important for me to showcase some of the priorities. And as I mentioned to you, perhaps in an earlier discussion, the ministry is looking at, Commons is looking at discussing with police chiefs and leaders as it relates to digital evidence management. It doesn't sound like it sounds like a private sector technology topic. However, as you can imagine, the complexities of the work that we do now in policing require so much infrastructure, technical skills, specialties, and a whole back end to it to support this big machine. But on the front end are some remarkable individuals doing work that is very critical. And today we have a broad unit called the Crimes Against Persons Unit, and within it is a subset called the Internet Child Exploitation Team. And I don't want to steal these two gentlemen's thunder, but this type of work is a very special area. We are leaders, I must say, nationally, provincially in this type of work. It's not done in isolation. You'll soon see the interconnectivity across borders. And the individuals that are in these teams, technical skills, but a heart for victims. And I'm sure they'll preface what you're about to hear and see, and the public hear and see, which I'm sure they're tempering it. We can't probably see exactly what they deal with every day. But it has a significant impact on the investigators and the civilians in this area. And perhaps at the end of it, I'll comment on it. But we know that we saw a tragic incident that OPP saw in in Aurelia where an officer tragically took his life, and we share our condolences and our support for the OPP. The totality of impact on our officers and individuals when they see critical incidents repeatedly requires, our support. I know you, Chair, have heightened that as an emphasis for me as a chief. This one particular unit has a high intensity and impact on individuals. One of the things that we've done to support them, and you won't hear them talk about it because they're so committed to their work, is to ensure that their wellness when they come into the unit. And we have a program called Safeguard, which we do, and Mark, the detective, looks after his team wholeheartedly. He sees their faces every day. We also have Crown attorneys that help prosecute this, that also look at the same images. They've gone about as far as extending our ability to check into the wellness of these individuals. I just trying to peel back the personal nature of the business that you're about to hear is that we have some remarkable investigators that are out to look after the interests of young people that are vulnerable, but they too get exposed. So while you're listening and hearing them, I just wanted to preface that we do have a remarkable set of people doing this work, and it's my pleasure as being the new person on the block to inherit such a great team. So I'll just turn it over to Inspector Hogue and Detective Gordon.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Chief. For the board and for the audience here today, the first two slides you're going to see here are awareness pieces that are put together by our amazing partners of the Canadian Center for Child Protection out of Winnipeg. They're very much in battle against the child sexual abuse material online with social awareness pieces. So I knew first is a video they put together a couple of years ago, and it illustrates some of the effects of this material online and some of the content and the actual amounts that we're dealing with. So the second slide here is also put together by the Canadian Center for Child Protection. It was the Lolly exhibit that was done this summer in Toronto. And what it illustrates is the amounts that we're dealing with here. In a 12-hour period, they uncovered more than 10,000 images that are referred to as lollies by the perpetrators that commit these offenses, describing the child victims or the abuse material that were discovered online. Over 10,000 images or videos in a 12-hour period globally. Just a history of our unit. So we were established in 2004 as an ICE unit, much smaller than what we are today. And in 2006, we became part of a group called the Provincial Strategy, which is a group of law enforcement community from across Ontario, managed by the Ontario Provincial Police. And the funding that comes with that, which is provided by the Community Safety and Correctional Services. We're part of the provincial strategy, and I may refer to it as the strategy moving forward, with 29 other law enforcement partners throughout Ontario. And further that, through the provincial strategy, that has afforded us and fostered strong relationships through other law enforcement communities across the globe. Our mandate is to reduce the supply and demand for child pornography, ensure the successful prosecution and sentencing of child pornography, and identify otherwise unknown victims. Those are pretty much the three main goals or part of the mandate that we look for. What is child porn? These are layman's terms trying to help people understand what we're looking for and what we do. It shows explicit sexual activity of someone under the age of 18, real or depicted. I say that in brackets because one of the current trends we're seeing arising is the arrival of child sex dolls that are being shipped into our country. Secondly, the main dominant feature for sexual purpose is the sexual organ or anal region of the person under the age of 18, and that does include cartoons and written material. What that can refer to that we've seen trends is the increase in animated porn, which is something that we're seeing more and more now. How do we investigate it? So looking at these images, you're looking at hip development, facial features, height and weight, body hair, genital and breast, development, skin texture, and sexual maturation. And on the slide there you see over 82% of the images analyzed by Cybertip are those of images of persons under the age of 12 years. These are the charges that we are commonly using in our investigations, along with their sentencing with respect to the timelines are different depending on how we proceed by indictment. They are obviously greater. The note and highlighted on the bottom, I've highlighted just to represent some of the operational pressures that we face. In 2018, R versus John, the ruling struck down minimum isolated offenses, and I quote, found to be entirely unnecessary and constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. I'll let you process that for yourself. We do have online luring investigations. These are proactive investigations that we've taken on. And it describes the communication with a person who is believed to be under the age of 18 with a computer system for the purpose of facilitating the following offenses, and that would be an indecent act, invitation to sexual touching, sexual interference, abduction, incest, child pornography, procuring prostitution, and sexual assault. Below that is the mandatory minimums and sentencing for those offenses. Applying child pornography to the definition of sexting, this is something that we're seeing more and more. Obviously, kids are provided smart devices, more and more commonly. And with that comes some of these issues that we're seeing. And we're discussing this in community groups regularly with these questions being posed. A lot to our school resource officers are having to deal with this. The most common thing is when they're trading images, are they committing the offense of child pornography? It describes those as so long as the act of the image is legal, all parties are aware of the image being made, all parties consent to the image. One in possession of either depicted or took part in the production. And images are strictly for their own consumption. And again, this talks about some of the displays of images being sent over online. No one can knowingly publish, distribute, transfer, sell, or advertise, or make available intimate image of a person knowing that they didn't give their consent. This highlights some of the partners, the major partners that we use in our investigations, the OPP being the managing partner of the provincial strategy. The RCMP, they house the National Child Coordination Center, which feeds us the what we call the NCDCC reports over the course of our investigations. They also house and maintain a national image database referred to for us is called Project WIC. Third group is the Missing Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They are a partner agency in the U.S. that work closely with the NCDCC, communicating back and forth trends and information and investigative requirements. Lastly is cybertip.ca, which is, in layman's terms, it's the online version of Crime Stoppers with respect to child sex abuse material online. And that's managed by our partners in the Canadian Center for Child Protection. This illustrates the performance of our unit over the past 12 years. Each year this seems to have grown to a peak of 49 in 2015. And at current time, I can say that that number of 36 should be changed to 40 as of this morning, 2019. Some of the investigative challenges that we face, firstly, personnel turnover. In 2018 and 2019, we've had a significant turnover in personnel. That presents some problems given that training for each investigator can take 1 to 2 years to get the course and requirements and develop the skills and abilities to investigate these to their fullest potential. The advancement in technology and storage, this is particularly presented some issues. Last year at this time, we've had 1.5 terabytes of data for us to analyze. This year we're at 14 terabytes. To put that in perspective, it's not uncommon for any of our investigations to seize one device that contains upwards of 1 million images or videos. Those videos need to be extracted from that device, presented to the investigators for their viewing, and they have to view every image on that device and categorize those images for the investigation. Roughly, in a 10-hour shift for one of these investigators, you can, depending upon the types of images and videos that they're reviewing and that person's skill set, you're looking at maybe 20 to 30,000 images or videos in a 10-hour period, just to put in perspective of the workload that we're dealing with. Secondly, last year this time we received about 50 reports from the NCEC Center. That's one area of the reporting structure that we received. 50 is last year's total. This time we're about 180 for images or reports of images of child sex abuse material online. The chief spoke about this earlier. All members of our unit take part in the safeguarding protocol. We see every semi-annually we visit a psychologist to have that protocol taking place. We also do pre and post exit interviews with each member of the ICE unit. I brought with me a couple of case studies that I'd like to share with you. First is a case study from this year, June 2019, when our partners from the Canadian Border Services Agency made us aware of an individual who entered our country with some suspected material. Following that information, our team underwent an investigation, which had started off with preservation orders, production orders, search warrants, surveillance, technical surveillance, leading to the arrest of the suspect and seizure and search warrant execution of that individual. And in review of that material that was found in possession of that individual, it was discovered that these were images that were created by this individual. So this is a hands-on, what we describe as a hands-on offender. This is a new live victim, unidentified to us, that while we've arrested, charged, and processed that individual, we still have the obligation to find that victim. That's quite an extensive process in itself. I'm happy to say that we were able to locate that victim and inform that family and seek out any assistance, and that was a great help through the RCMP law enforcement agencies who reached out to the victim who was identified in Lahore, Pakistan. Just to give you an idea of the geographical dimensions of our investigations, there's no borders with respect to these investigations. Case study 2 speaks to the luring component that we investigated. The individual that we investigated with was on a popular social media platform where he was luring young girls into his network for the purpose of exchanging sexual material of those young girls. This individual was communicating with, at one point, at least 4 undercover operators from around North America, committing various offenses. Through the investigation, it was determined that this person was living in the region of Peel, and we were made aware of it and drawn into the investigation. We executed, again, several authorizations, search warrants, surveillance in order for us to come to a successful conclusion, where we arrested, executed a search warrant, and seized several devices that corroborated the evidence of these luring charges, and charges were made here in Canada. And that is all for the conclusion of my presentation. I appreciate your opportunity for your time today.
Thank you very much. There are questions, Mayor Crombie.
Well, I don't know where to begin making notes, but let me just first say how disturbing this is, how sickened I am as a mother and as a parent. And I can understand now very well how Chief Dish talked about the safeguard program and the concern for the mental wellness of the officers. It's no wonder they get the 6-month checkup, and no wonder you have high turnover. I mean, who could expose themselves for over long periods of time to this sort of thing? So I don't know what the solution to that is. Greater minds than mine will. I guess you train more officers more often. Thank you for this work that you do. And it must take a toll on your mental health. It's taken a toll on mine just listening to your presentations. So you're actually viewing images that are very disturbing. With respect to the number of perpetrators, you've arrested 40 this year. It seems to be a drop in the bucket. It was interesting that that the luring officers led you to one perpetrator in Peel, and on a high level, how were you able to determine that they were in Peel?
So determination can be, most times with service providers, won't give exact details of certain issues that require authorization to gain that information. However, they do show a certain area that these perpetrators resolve. Once that's been established, a reach out to that jurisdiction, whether it be appeal or otherwise, is made, and then the investigation is
And there's still no way to trace them through their URL or anything, whatever, means of communication they're using.
We do have some success in tracing these individuals. Obviously, we've been able to identify a number of individuals in our jurisdiction and process the investigation and charge them.
Well, we're very grateful that you do, and we thank you for the work you do. And with respect to the victims, if there are victims in Peel, and what kind of support do we give them and their families?
So there's various number of supports and resources we can provide.
I mean, offshore, I guess it's different, but certainly in North America.
So I spoke earlier about our one group that I have a strong allegiance with and foster a great relationship. That's the Canadian Center for Child Protection. They're a non-profit organization. They're definitely in the fight here with us. They provide a great resource for us. They're based out of Winnipeg. They started out in Winnipeg as Child Find, and they've evolved into a national program. At a moment's notice, I can call, Lindsay from Center for Child Protection. She'll be here tomorrow.
Wow.
So that's the kind of resource we
I
get.
mean, I have heard in the past that we were able to identify the victim based on some location determinant. Somehow someone was able to say, oh, I know that that's a motel on the airport strip or something. They were able to find the location and make the arrest and find the child as well. So I really don't have a lot of questions other than a lot of gratitude for the work you do, and feel badly for the toll it must take on your mental health, because it's not something I could expose myself to on a daily or regular basis. But I'm certainly glad there are people like you that do find these people and arrest them and help protect our children. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Crombie. If there's no other speakers, Chief, I appreciate your mentioning that it is something. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Len, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Len, please.
Thank you, Detective Gordon, for an excellent presentation. I couldn't agree more with Mayor Crombie on the difficulty of looking at thousands of pictures and trying to get out of your mind when you go home to relax. I'm not sure if seeing a psychiatrist every 6 months would help, but it's got to be a very difficult task. Have you had any luck with software that helps you do that, just facial recognition or something that can take the toll off looking at too many photographs?
So yes, we, in the past, it's still evolving as we speak. Semantics 21 is a software program that we rely on that's been a great tool, and what I would say is a pre-categorization tool that we use. It creates a significant impact on our workload. At some level, you're still required to view it and classify it, but it gives you at least a pre-categorization report that you can rely on and use in your investigation. That does help us in our efforts.
My second question would be regarding trying to find the final location of some of these perpetrators on the internet with VPNs and Privacy Act. Are you finding the web providers are cooperating with you to try and chase some of these guys down?
So, yes, very difficult and a very good point. That does have a significant impact on our investigation. And yes, the providers, in my opinion, have demonstrated the appetite to suppress this material. We get reports that come directly from those providers to the NCECC, and then downward towards us once it's been determined it's in our jurisdiction, where they've been the lead in identifying and removing those materials from the internet.
Well, hopefully in the long run we can revise the criminal code and make it illegal to publish material like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Attia.
I'd like to also thank you for the work you're doing. I'd like to ask some questions maybe at a larger, one step up around the online environment and the threats it's posing to our children and our youth, minors. Another area where children are being exposed and are vulnerable is, being pulled into these, dark holes where they're being exposed to radicalization and extremism. And maybe it's not a question for you per se, but with regards to service and how we're dealing with this, there are a lot of minors, and there are minors and youth and children who, because of mental health issues they already have, are being pulled into these conversations and these chats, which whatever it is that's exposing them to this, and they're also victims, and it leads them down paths as well that are very difficult and could eventually, they can commit crimes, right? And so we're seeing this becoming more and more. So my first question is, in Peel, what are we doing about this, in helping these identifying victims in that space, and how are we helping them not go down that path? So I don't know, maybe it's not a question for you, but I'm very curious. It's opened my eyes to, it's a similar problem.
So first I'll address the question as it pertains to my investigative body work. And it does broaden the perspective. So we do have a regular request to become available for what's called Cyber Academy, where we do presentations to the public, awareness pieces to keep them apprised of the trends that's going on in our jurisdiction, the threats to our children, steps that we can take to protect them. And those are not specific just to ICE-related investigations. Those are online threats. So it does speak to your overall concern. And we're continually, we're in this with our community to fight this, because the awareness piece is so important. And we place a great value on it with our
As I understand it, Chief, we have a cyber crimes unit. Do they have any focus on?
Yes, thank you for the question. And we do have a pretty fulsome approach from a technological side, the cybercrime unit, which works very closely with our ICE team. But there are multiple facets within that, which sort of look at the medium of the internet presence for indicators towards criminality in a variety of different areas, including, where we're headed to victimization of people, as well as, potentially radicalization or a departure from common norms. And we, back to the duck paddling under the water, I think we've probably found another opportunity to, do a public presentation to show you as much as we can show you without exposing, some of our techniques, but how we do use our ability to look at social media, the internet presence, as it relates to that. We have some really remarkable individuals that are seen, and you would know Detective Ishmael very well, as leaders in, speaking to this. So they all have a confluence of issues that all stem from our ability to deploy resources to look at these things. And just for context, Mr. Attia, is that it's Mark and 5 other people looking at, one of his members, he just said, does 20 to 30,000 images a day. And then once something's found, it has to trigger a really complex investigative process. And the balance of finding, resource to be able to do that is a really challenging thing. But we'd be happy to come back to the board at a later point to speak to that. And I just want to finally comment that, although they're seeing clinicians, maybe once a year or 6 months upon exit or entry, it really isn't enough. And so I think we have an awareness as an organization and a commitment in the new year to really enhance our ability to do that. At times we've done things because it was the best available at the time, and it was perhaps an out-of-the-box ability to check on the well-being, and not to discount the value of safeguarding, but we do recognize, and President Woolley, who is here too, and I have chatted about
the combined effort towards the wellness of our people with what we can do in the future. So we look forward to coming back to you perhaps as a presentation of what we're doing in that regard as well.
So just one more question around public awareness. And so like I think this week there was a motion presented or a private member's bill presented at the Ontario government legislature around cyberbullying. And what was interesting about it is apparently in Ontario, we are doing much less on awareness when it comes to cyberbullying than, in other places. So, just taking that thought around this issue, is there more needed as well around public awareness on this issue to help prevent and protect children, our children?
I would say there's no cap to that. The more awareness and the more involved our community members become with this issue, the better off we are going to be in the fight against this child sex abuse material online. So to answer your question, I would say no, there's no cap. We could continue this, and as the audience grows, so does the awareness piece, so does perhaps some of the suppression.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Brown.
And just briefly, I think a lot of this has already been said, particularly from the chief when he said, we'll look at what's needed going forward. But obviously heart-wrenching and despicable to think of how real and visible this threat is. And so I just hope we have the resources to give you every tool possible to combat this scourge and fight it as aggressively as we can and hold those who are perpetrating this crime against children in our community to make sure they're held accountable, because there couldn't be something more horrific.
Thank you. And if I could just add one thought, because we've gone this far. This is my second privilege of sitting on the board. The first time I sat in the late 1990s. You do the orientation that everyone else does, you do the ride-alongs, et cetera. And I had my first insight into the work that you folks do. It was through IDENT, and they had a binder on the floor and say, Chair, I was in the chair at the time, board member, here's just some of the stuff that we investigate. I opened the cover, saw the first picture, ran to the washroom, gave back breakfast, and the image haunts me 20 years later. And I'm not going to get into the, and it was a suggestive image. It was a suggestive image. And they said, it just gets worse. I know, I'm good. 20 years later, the image haunts me. Can you imagine looking at 10,000 of them a day? How can it not affect you as a human being? And then you got to deal with the scum that are responsible for them and track them down and chase them. So, Chief, that's why, and I appreciate this is the point I'm coming to, it comes down to resources, and I want to speak to 2 points. The resources that the force, the service needs to deal with the stresses and the strains of having to do one of the worst jobs in civilization. I want the confidence that all of the resources necessary for people in the service are forthcoming. And secondly, and it's related, and all of the resources that you need in a technological sense to keep chasing the bad guys. Because when I brought it up at the police service back then, led to a long conversation around the board, and it concluded with the chief of the day saying, and I've used this phrase before, because we were pressing and the board was very, but what about this? And, well, these are sophisticated people and we're not all graduates of MIT, and an exasperated chief saying, we're police officers, you call, we come. But early in its infancy, how well do we understand the internet? And we don't hire graduates from Berkeley or doctoral degrees in technology. Maybe now we do. I'd like to know, Chief, on both fronts, the resources that we need for the health and well-being of the service are plentiful, and anything that's needed, this board will approve, and the resources that we need from a technological training point of view are absolute, whatever it is that is required. And Chief, your comments on that, and can you give us some confidence that that's what you're pursuing and that that's what the board is happy to support?
Certainly, Chair, and I think my team would know that we've been discussing in this last 51 days. I would be confident to say that we'll be back to the board in January with a real renewal of our commitment and actual demonstration of that. We've, got ideas that I've sort of let out of the hat a little bit on my side that we would be doing organizationally to put an emphasis into it. But I, first of all, want to thank you for your implied and obvious support. We will make sure that we as an organization build some significant resiliency and ability to mitigate that risk for our people. And I know you've said this before, to send them home the way we got them. So we'll continue doing that.
Chief, thank you very much. We look forward to that. Okay, with that, I need receipt of the presentation from Mayor Crombie and Mayor Brown. All those in favor? That is carried. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your service. This brings us to other new business. We will now move on to the first item under other new business. It is item number 5, the VCOM microwave backhaul upgrade. We have the report before us. Are there any, Chief, did you want to speak to this, or?
No, I'd speak to Randy, but I think this is a natural infrastructure requirement for the network that we have across this region.
Are there any questions at this time from the board? Seeing none, it's been moved by Al Boughton. It's seconded by Mr. Howell. All those in favor? That carries. With that, this concludes the public portion of our Appeal Services Board meeting. So we will now adjourn for a moment and then move right into camera. So thank you for those in attendance, those that do not require to be here for the in-camera.